I'm already into the more money, damn it.
So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
You like music, you like weed, well, we gonna be good friends indeed. This is how much I like more than smoking trees. They'll make you dance the do-si-do and teach you how the chiva grows. Smoke a bowl on the 420 radio show. On Lifestyle Radio.
I wish it would unmute everything just a few seconds before the end so everybody could sing. Hi, how are you?
Hi. I'm fine.
I'm here with Paul Hartman and Kim Sakamoto. Correct? Sakamoto. Marijane will be along in a bit. She's going to be a little bit late, and unfortunately the guys had other stuff going on. So it's just us, and we're going to hang out. We're going to watch some videos. We're going to talk about a really cool guy who I'm going to share my first experience with him because it's very memorable for me, and it was a really small one, and then these guys are just going to take off and talk about him. Alan John Park was a member of the Royal Canadian Air Force. Now, I don't think he was in the original ensemble, right? But he was a big part of it to the point where if you go on YouTube, you're going to find a lot of funny shit that he's done over the years. My first experience meeting him was at an event that I went to with Marijane. And after hanging around with him all day long, listening to him talk about cannabis, because it was a big part of his life, as we'll find out, we spent 30 minutes driving through rush hour in the city of Toronto listening to Alan just go off on things because he had very big anxiety about being in the car in the first place. So it was very, I think, Kim, you were in the back, I think.
No, but I've been in the car with Alan many times, and
so
I feel, yeah.
Yeah. So that was my first experience meeting Alan, and so I just wanted to share that. These two, Kim and Paul, knew him very well. They worked on projects with him. Paul was, his best bud until he found another best bud when he got married. Yeah, well, you know what? It happens, buddy. Everybody grows apart, right? So let's talk about Alan, shall we? He passed away on the 10th.
Yeah. Last Thursday.
From cancer, prostate cancer, I believe. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which was not his first round. Why don't you guys fill everybody in, because he made a spectacle of it on purpose. Right.
He used himself as an experiment at times, which pissed all of us off because we were worried as fuck about him all the time. But yes, he really did want to get his voice across about why he was still living despite a terminal diagnosis. I mean, he went 8 years past his initial diagnosis of 10 months just by using oil alone.
Yes.
So
sometimes a little too much, but we'll cover that later, won't we, Paul? Mm-hmm.
He definitely pushed the envelope on what could be done.
Yeah.
Well, he was, I'm still waiting for a certain network to say something because, everybody else seems to be jumping on it. He pushed the limits at a time when cannabis was a nasty word. It cost him his career.
It did, for sure.
Okay.
Like, he put his money where his mouth was. Totally.
But once he opened his mouth, nobody wanted to do anything with him because it was an unwritten rule. You don't talk about cannabis, especially if you're sick.
Yeah.
And now we're here.
It's an interesting thing, Alec. one of the things that bonded Alan and I was that I had prostate cancer. And I was diagnosed in 2015. I caught mine really early. Out of the 13 samples they took out of my prostate when they did the biopsy, I had 13% in one sample. And my PSA was 12.7. Alan's got up to 1,200.
Wow. Yep.
Like, I didn't even know the scale went that high. And that's kind of the miracle of what Alan did. You know, he knocked it all the way down to 0 from there. Like, I never got there. I got down to 3.4, and that seemed to be my 0, right? His battle was just kind of phenomenal, you know, and what justified the whole thing in my mind was that when I got diagnosed, 8 of my friends got diagnosed with different cancers. And before 2 years ran out, I was the only one alive. Some of them died. Angel Rosenthal, who helped get Phil's star on Canada's Walk of Fame, got cancer. The first chemo treatment killed her. It happens to 2% of the people who do chemo, right? Another friend of mine, he had a spot on his lung, had a history of liver cancer. Mother, father, sister, all died of liver cancer. He had the thing removed. The cancer was gone from his body when they removed it, and he elected to have preventative chemotherapy. But what his oncologist failed to do was take into consideration his history and his family, and they gave him the chemotherapy that had a predisposition for liver cancer. All chemotherapies in the drug interaction warning and warnings tell you what the predisposition cancer is that is related to that chemotherapy. And it was just insane, you know, and it's like John Ravnig, one of the most brilliant songwriters I've ever met in his life. Him and Geir Wergeson are kind of like the Lennon and McCartney of Norway. And he was a client at the time. He got a skin cancer. It had hit a lymph node in his neck. And he was dead in 6 months. And we found out on Facebook. It was like, oh my God, it was crazy.
Well, I didn't realize that Alan was sick. That's how I found. I can't remember what her name is. One of the ladies that follows me that knew Alan let me know, and then I asked you, and you know, it was like I hadn't talked to him in a while, so I didn't know. Apparently, Marijane was talking to him quite recently, and so she knew stuff was going on. But I had no idea. It was very out of left field. I wasn't really ready for that, you know.
Yeah, I lost touch with him when he left Jamaica. He came down when I was at Castle Black, and I got permission from Aaron Cadeau to have him stay in my room and let him do all the oil he wanted. And in 90 days, he did 400 grams of oil. And he kind of became the night shift at the castle. I'd work all day. He'd sleep all day. And he would be up all night with security, dancing and chanting and singing to the moon and doing oil. And then he would come in and go to sleep. We shared a room, right? He was in my bedroom with me. And then he slipped into this thing where he was talking stream of consciousness. And it was like, you know, at first it was like, holy shit, like, this is incredible. Like,
I couldn't handle that.
Some of it is so brilliant, and then some of it is like, holy space alien shit. Right?
I couldn't talk to him for very long because of that. I couldn't, because of my ADHD. It was just like, wow, no, sorry, too much. You know.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I had been around him. I mean, when I met Alan, he was sick, so I never knew him healthy. And that was in 2015 or 2016. And by the end, and even 2 years before he died, I knew his language. It was the strangest thing. And Paul, you can probably attest for this too. Just by keywords he was saying in the end, and knowing all the stories that went behind those keywords, you could figure out what was going on and what he was trying to get across, which was really interesting. Yeah,
totally true, Kim.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing, I think you were talking about the healing part. If you looked at Alan's skeleton, even 2 or 3 years before he died, the cancer had already metastasized at that point. And, he would laugh and joke about looking like a cheetah on X-ray or on MRIs because his body was literally pitted, bone loss everywhere. So it was a frickin' miracle that he could sustain and keep going the way he did for so long.
Yeah, one of the things Stephanie Corin said to me was that, and she's his sister-in-law, I believe.
Yes.
And executor of his will, was that it didn't get to his brain, but it got to his skull. Mm-hmm. And at the point where he had stage 4 and it had metastasized to his skeleton, it wasn't in his brain or his skull yet.
Yeah.
And so when he was leaving Jamaica, that was my big worry, was like, fuck, it made it to his brain. And that's why he's freaking out, right?
I remember you texting me that. Yeah.
I remember when he came back, he
fortunately it wasn't true, right? Like that bought him a great deal of time, I feel. Mm-hmm. And what was amazing was that, the cancer was still there when he left, when he got to Toronto, and they checked him out, but it hadn't progressed to a more serious stage yet, although his numbers were fucked up. But PSA didn't mean anything in this case,
Yeah.
Like it just didn't have that kind of effect on him,
And him,
he just... Go on, Kim.
It just, that whole coming back from Jamaica leads up to the funniest story that one of the funniest memories I have of Alan is the fact that, he came back in that state, that elevated state of almost a psychosis, through security back to the Toronto airport, and managed to borrow a wheelchair from the airport, cane, and a dog. I think he had the dog. And he made it from the Toronto airport to the Downtown Yucks Comedy Club in less than 2 days.
Is that where he went when he disappeared? He went to Yucks?
Yeah. And then he showed up at my house and he sold the wheelchair to a homeless guy out front, and made money off of it. It was just such a classic Alan move, right? I still laugh about it today.
Oh my God. He could sell a wheelchair to a homeless person. Yeah. Wow. This is the peach rings infused joint, by the way.
Nice.
Smoking in the other.
Nice.
Lovely.
So, let's go back. I don't know how far back you guys really know about, but let's go back and talk about, he was on the Royal Canadian Air Force, which at the time was, when it was really big, was kind of like the Canadian version of SNL, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Totally, I agree.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that really connected me to him, right? When I looked at his reel from Royal Canadian Air Force, and I went, wow, he's my brother that never left Canada, right? Like, he was Phil in so many ways, right? And I was like, and that's like, in my mind, a huge compliment. And he offered me a solace and a security that I couldn't figure out, really, right? And when I would watch his reels, I just go, wow, there's such a depth to his imitations,
Yeah, I've got the best of Alan Park on Air Farce. loaded up on YouTube. I wanted to say Facebook. You keep mentioning Phil. I want to make sure that people realize that you're referencing your brother Phil Hartman of SNL. And hi MJ. And just so that people understand the reference there. That's
Hey guys.
Now you were the baby, right, Paul?
Pardon me?
You're the baby, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I'm the baby.
He's the baby.
There's some old people in my family.
Okay, so
I'm number 6 of 8.
Let me load up this video, and then when we come back, we'll let MJ share some stories because I know that she loved him as well. Okay, so this is, like I said, this is Best of Alan Park from the Royal Canadian Air Force.
Hey there, Don Ferguson here with Air Farce Funnies. Today it's the man of many voices, the Best of Alan Park.
Hey, what's that?
Toasted chicken sandwich, you little geek.
You feeling okay?
Sauteed vegetables and snake lips.
Why are you talking like Clint Eastwood? And what's with the letterbox?
Zesty sauce. Hot and zesty with big buns. That's the way I like my women, too.
You skipped your meds today, didn't you?
Go ahead. Make my focaccia.
Tim Hortons new Insane Guy Toasted Chicken Sandwich with coffee and capsule, only $5.95. Tim Hortons. Tasty combos for crazy people.
I wish they hadn't cut that last bit off.
Hello, I'm a liberal.
Hang on a sec here.
And I'm a PC.
All right. Do we want to watch another one?
Your man was funny.
And you know what? He got himself in trouble, I believe, on Air Farce.
Did he?
In a little bit of a way, too, because he brought himself into a lot of these skits that he did and took it over the top without, there were certain ones that he played. I remember him telling me that he took it a little too far on a live taping, and he was always pushing the envelope, whether it was with CBC or whether it was on Green Crush. So he looks a lot different than he used to, but he was still Alan.
Yeah, I think you have to do that in comedy, and it's kind of fucked up. I think that everybody's become so wimpy. It's like if you're not pushing the envelope in comedy, it's not real comedy. It's supposed to be satirical and it's supposed to sting. You know what I mean? Because
they're not.
We're freaking stupid.
SNL did the same.
Yeah,
thing.
everybody's
Not
gotten a little
SNL.
sensitive in the last, I want to say decade, because it's been more than just like a couple years. But in the last decade, everyone's gotten a little sensitive, and we all need to just understand that a joke is sometimes just that. It's just a joke.
Yeah.
And it's okay to laugh. It's okay to laugh.
If it makes you uncomfortable, then it's a good joke. You know what I mean? It's like making you reach deep inside yourself and go, wow, like, is humanity really like this?
It's called comedy.
Well, and Alan would get called out sometimes for doing past roles. Like he played Barack Obama a lot. And part of that role involved wearing brown makeup on his face. Yes. And CBC put that brown makeup on his face. But yet years later, he would get razzed and called out because of it. And people just weren't putting together that, CBC was the one that did it in a time that a lot of people were doing it.
Look at what
some
Second
people
City
can't
did.
understand that time difference, I guess. And he'd get flack for it all the time.
It's sad because you see movies like Tropic Thunder, which is, it's very, the line is there and they're kind of, so it's, I don't know. I feel like life is kind of like a pendulum and it swings one way and the other. And I feel like we've gone so far this way that eventually, especially with comedy, that the pendulum will come back. I feel like we're seeing this a little bit with Dave Chappelle doing SNL.
Well, he just got himself into trouble. So,
well, he'll always forever be getting himself into trouble because it's the type of comedy. It's subjective, and it is sometimes a little. It makes your hair on the back of your neck go up a little bit, and you wonder, should I be laughing at this? But it's funny.
Here's an example.
So that's why I say just laugh. It's okay.
I watched. I'd never seen it before. I'm a huge fan of Leslie Nielsen's. Okay, all the airplane movies and that. So I'm going through Netflix, and I find, crap, what's it called? Shit, now I got to look. But he's older. Marion from Happy Days. Marion Ross, is that her name? Marion Ross, the mother on Happy Days. Come on, you're my age, Paul.
Yeah, that's before my time.
I just know Naked Gun he was in.
Yeah, Naked Gun. But this is it's that same flavor. I'm looking to see if I can find it.
It's definitely Marion Ross.
Where
the investigator has confirmed this.
Say that again.
It's Marion Ross.
Marion Ross. There you go. Thank you. But what's the movie I'm talking about?
It's the movie. My investigator is searching it now.
So am I.
Marion Ross movie with Jesus, Leslie Nielsen.
Like it's 2006 or something like that. I just watching it.
That's funny. I love that you have an investigator. I think every good podcast, like I've been into the Rogan podcast lately, and he has Jamie.
Yeah.
I was like, I think everybody needs a Jamie, somebody who can like find that information when you need it.
Absolutely. It should be on an earbud going into it.
I used to have one of those. His name was Brian.
Superhero movie.
That's it. We're hiring. We're looking for somebody.
Anyways, my point was back in the day of Airplane and movies like that, Leslie Nielsen and OJ did and Marion Ross and a whole bunch of other people did cameos, and it was hilarious. And it was black humor, it was white humor, it was brown humor, it was green humor, it was like you can't talk in the white zone, that kind of humor. It was just off the wall. Mel Brooks did the same kind of thing with help me. Blazing Saddles. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then you go back further, and I like to watch the old Dean Martin roasts. You could not get away with stuff like that. They try and do the roasts the way Dean did them, right? The way Jerry did them, right? No. You can't
Even
do
up
that
to
anymore.
the 80s and 90s, they had some, that's my favorite genre for movies. And I'll throw one on and drop my jaw a couple times, because even things they were showing on those movies are today a no-no, right?
Yes. Yeah, well, and they've gone as far. I am the Addams Family. Okay? It's on my mind because Wednesday starts next week on Netflix, okay, which is an updated version of what we all know and love, even with the short, stumpy, fat Gomez, right? And I'm looking forward to it, but I don't know how well it's going to work in this environment. The horror genre is really big right now. But comedy is coming back. That's for sure.
Well, I don't think comedy's ever really left. It's changed. Like,
yep.
People have become so sensitive that people were finding issue with old episodes of Friends. And Friends was literally a show that was meant to discuss those awkward conversations that we were having at those times. They were funny. So was Seinfeld. Seinfeld is literally based on a show of 4 terrible people. And it's hilarious. The last episode, they literally all go to jail.
Really?
Sorry if you haven't seen it.
I guess that. Thanks a lot.
Timmy's mad now. He's like, what? They go to jail?
So
sorry, babe.
I didn't like either of those shows for some reason.
You know, just like The Simpsons, I can't get into The Simpsons at all. None of those animated, cartoony shows.
What about South Park?
No.
Oh, I love South Park.
No. I like the voices, but I can't sit and watch it.
So wild. It's crazy.
I can't watch
Family Guy. Family Guy is really...
can't do it.
Pushes the buttons.
Yeah, Quagmire was the reason why I couldn't watch that show anymore. I was just like, that's a little too far, guys. Too far.
Yeah, Quagmire is a bit...
It's nice to see, though, that comedy still sees the line and pushes it. Like you say, like if it makes you uncomfortable, it's funny. There's something there. You can laugh. You can laugh. It's okay.
Yeah, but if you don't like it, change the channel. Real, you know, that's my thing. If you don't like it, change the channel. Don't whine about it. Change the channel. There's plenty of other things to watch. You know,
exactly. There's 15,000 channels out there. Like you don't have to sit there and be humiliated.
And you brought it up, Al. I ended up doing the press release when Alan passed away, just to notify all the press. Of course, Canadian press picked it up right away, and it went across the nation on every major media outlet, which Danny and I, the other producer of Green Crush, were actually really proud of, because for years we tried to get that medicinal cannabis Green Crush with Ellen Park line in the media, and mainstream would never touch it. Yeah, I know. So in that respect, we were just smiling because it was that even those couple sentences being in mainstream media meant so much to us. But on the other hand, CBC has still not said a word, despite the fact that this man worked for him for 10 years. So,
I find that shocking. I find that shocking that they still have not said anything. I've seen a few other outlets say something. You know,
I find it more sad than anything.
Yeah, it is.
It's just sad.
Now, Alan also would parade around the front of CBC. I had been there times with the camera on, with him, trying to get his message across in his Alan way. So I know there was friction there. But still, in memoriam, I'm shocked that they didn't pay some respects to him.
It wasn't even brought up on the news, I don't think.
No,
I don't think anybody mentioned it on the news. There was a few websites, like I said, that sent out stuff.
It was in the ticker on Global News, had it in the ticker on the bottom. Like, they covered it, right? So it just, like I said, it was really surprising that even someone that he worked with from those past years didn't come forward and want to write a story about him.
Well,
I think the problem of the relationship to cannabis for all of it, is that that's significant because it symbolizes they're still not on board, right? Yeah. Like the current industry in the United States and here is destroyed.
The Canadian government still does not say that cannabis is
$30 a pound.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's cheaper than Jamaica at some time.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I think I might move.
By legalizing it, they destroyed it. Wow. And they did that with regulations and laws and every different despicable means they could think of. And it shows that they aren't believers. They don't give a fuck. They jumped on board for money only.
It still says on the website, on Health Canada's website about cannabis, it says that it is not medicinal.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, I don't think they knew exactly, the demand. The demand alone in Ontario, a lot of us, people that consumed cannabis pre-legalization, were giggling because we knew what the government was talking about rolling out. We were like, you're going to be sold out of weed like day 2. It was day one of selling cannabis on the Ontario Cannabis Store, and it was sold out.
I mean, cannabis is still
in
banks as well.
Well, and then they overproduced.
Yeah.
And they overproduced an amount of cannabis that in strains that people don't necessarily are looking for. And cannabis is literally the only thing I've ever seen. Like, if you like ketchup and you like Heinz ketchup, chances are you're going to stick with Heinz ketchup.
Correct.
Cannabis is not like that. Cannabis is like when you go into a candy store and you go in and you see all these different jars and candies and gummies and chocolates, and you're like, I want to try one of everything.
Correct.
So when the market says we only give you this much, people stop going to the legal market and saying, we're going to go here because this has more option. And now Ontario is literally, just Ontario alone is sitting on a massive factory of cannabis that they have to destroy.
Look, they've been doing the same thing with wine. There are people who are so into wine, they'll walk into a room and go, and they drool at the tastings and stuff like that. But yet we're not allowed to taste. We're not allowed to go to events and sample. Although hoping this is going to change. Yet.
Yeah, just like with prohibition, we didn't. I've heard stories of when you first could buy alcohol. It was similar to cannabis, where you had to go in and write down what you wanted from like a board. Like, you couldn't see the bottles. You couldn't go in and pick up a bottle of wine or scotch or whatever. You had to write it down and say, this is what I want. So I feel like, although just like we're struggling now with cannabis, hopefully it will evolve and we'll be able to go and have cannabis tastings. And
Paul, you remember
funny, in the old days in Mexico and Central America, weed was $25 to $125 a kilo, and the $125 a kilo was the first sensimilla that came out of that area, right?
Yeah.
And it was pretty rare, and it was worth, maybe $1,200 or $1,300 a pound in California, U.S. And the beginning of that whole thing, that was like right on the edge. In the late 70s, you were starting to see the first real cultivation in California, right? And I had never seen it anywhere in California before. I'd seen a lot in Mexico, but I remember going to Carmel Valley to somebody's farm and seeing the first homegrown in California that I'd ever seen. And that was probably about 1978. And it looked so different than what you would see in Mexico, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, this is trippy, like this stuff looks really good. And then we smoked some that they had previously grown. And it was like, this is like, you got Big Sur on the south side of Carmel Valley, and then you got Watsonville and all that stuff going towards Santa Cruz. And so it had that unique Northern California microclimate. And,
that's now Humboldt area, right? Is that the area that's in?
Way south of San Francisco, almost mid-California.
Oh, okay.
And Big Sur, Carmel Valley, some amazing things happen there in terms of cannabis and breeding. A guy named Mojave Richmond, his father was a pot grower. Father and mother grew pot in Big Sur, and he was one of the first guys in Amsterdam during the seed revolution, right? And he's partners with Robert Cornell Clark, who wrote Marijuana Botany. And they do genetic consulting to big companies all over the world. But he was kind of there during the inception of all this stuff when it started to blend. Somebody's going to write a history of this shit at some point. You know what I mean? And it actually is really fascinating, because it was a culture that was hiding, right? And at the same time trying to promote legalization in California. Yeah. So it was pretty interesting, the people who emerged, Dennis Perrone and people like that, who actually were so instrumental in the whole medical marijuana thing in California, right?
Yeah, and then on the other side of things, there was all the smuggling that was going on, from Jamaica.
Crazy amount of smuggling.
Yep. And we've, we've had those guys on the show. We've had, I can't remember the last name of them, but it was Doug and somebody. They were both pilots. They used to bring in the bales and drop them, and the boats would pick them up. We had buddy there, Robert Plattstorm from the Black Tuna Gang. Hella stories. I've been trying to get what's his name there, the from Midnight Express, Billy Hayes, on the show because his life is just wow. I like hearing those stories. Like,
pretty riveting.
Your life fascinates me, Paul. Okay? Never mind that you're Phil Hartman's brother. Okay, your life is fascinating. The things that you have done, and now I want to make sure that we touch base on where you're going to be going soon because it's very interesting.
Oh man,
yeah.
My story is. David Karp, the writer for the LA Times and Gourmet Magazine and National Geographic, wrote an article about me in the 90s. It was David Karp's Magical Organic Farm, LA Times.
He was a very naughty boy back then.
Yeah. But I grew a lot of really expensive vegetables. And I had a 480-acre farm, everything, 37 kinds of tomatoes.
Oh, you meant really like vegetables. I thought that was
code. We were the premier organic produce farm in Southern California. We did 5 farmers markets a day. There's 660 farmers markets a week in California, in Southern California.
Wow.
So
and
it's an incredible cash cow, right?
I get pissed off just as much about, you're talking about the heirloom seeds and all that kind of stuff. And, tying into what Marijane said, it pisses me off so much that the government has, in a Monsanto type way, done away with all of these old strains like they've done with food.
But they have them somewhere in a jar. They're sitting somewhere in a vault. But we're not.
Yeah, just in case.
Being preserved by,
in case we need them on Mars or something.
No, in case they need them.
There's the Seed Savers Exchange.
Yeah.
And that you become a member for $24 and they send you a big catalog of all the members that are preserving seeds, right, of different kinds of heirlooms.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
It's insane what you can
What
get.
is that? What is that again, Paul?
Seed Savers Exchange in Decorah, Iowa.
Okay.
Alrighty.
I got most of my seeds from them, and one of the things we did on our farm, we had a seed program, and Rich Pecoraro, who was one of the founders of Seeds of Change, which is the largest organic seed company in the world, was bought up by Mars, and it was started by him and 2 other guys, and they sold out to Mars for a bunch of money, but he came and ran the seed program at my farm, and we had contracts with Seeds of Change and Johnny Select Seeds from Vermont and companies like that. And so a great deal of what we did was just seed crops, and we would sell a lot of the fruit out of the crop, but primarily half of it would go towards seed production. And melons and squashes and corn and flowers and herbs and all kinds of stuff, wet, dry processes. And he ran that whole operation, and it was one of the bigger parts of what we did. Mm-hmm. And the whole premise was that, you if you put the love back into food, you affect subtle change in people at the most minimum level, and that's nutrition and emotional health and all those things that proper food can help provide, right?
Yeah.
So, and at the same time, we were growing herb and mushrooms. So,
one of our regular listeners says, "What for Iowa?"
I was talking to Al and Paul about it before. Marijane, I've moved out of the city. I was in Toronto 3 years ago. And I am now in Armstrong, which is coined Farmstrong because it's literally just farmland and food growing everywhere.
And kittens.
And kittens too. But they have a slew of First Nations dispensaries out here. About 15 of them in a row here, and about 10 minutes down the road on West Kelowna, on the West Okanagan. They've got another 10 or 15 there. They call it the Green Mile.
Yeah, they call it the
Alderville literally
is the Green Mile as well.
They'll supply you with whatever you want for a half to a quarter of the price that you would pay in a legal store.
And it should be.
All of the legal growers in Vernon and Kelowna have banded together and have a multi-million-dollar suit pending against the nations right now because they feel that they're selling it illegally. And they're doing this because they've literally shut down all of these. No one's going to shop at those places when you can go up the road.
One of the things that we're hearing is going on, Kim, up here, they're from Sault Ste. Marie, basically, up. There are no dispensaries on any reservations up here because of the addiction problems they're having.
Oh, okay.
And I'm assuming it just makes sense that's one of the reasons why. Although there are bands that are fighting it, but now
that's interesting you say that because I'm like, no, because there's evidence to support the cannabis could assist.
Of course, absolutely. But they have alcohol.
So whatever the reason, anyway.
Yeah, whatever.
I understand. Yeah.
But okay, so. Where was I going with that? There's no weed on the reservations up here, but now what the legal sector is doing is they're going on to the reservation and they're saying we'd like to bring a legal store here, and but the catch is you can't open up any res stores if we're here. So that way they're going in and then they're stopping any res stores from opening, right? Like Alderville is great. I stopped at a place just outside of Wawa, but that's the closest one between here and the next province, basically, that has any reservation.
Well, are they proposing that the ones that are already open are good to go, but nothing new?
You know what? I know that I've heard in Alderville, and Marijane might be able to enlighten us on this as well. They have, I think there was 22 stores or 18 stores, and they said no more stores can open, and you can only be open up until 7 o'clock. And they regulate it like big time. And
I think each reservation is creating their own like legislation based on what is happening within I'm going to say this wrong, within their community.
Their bands.
Thank you. Yeah. So within the council they all decide what is going on within their community, but I think the bigger issue is, and I think I heard something, I'm probably wrong. I feel like this is where we need the fact checker. But I think the Indigenous communities
Marcel,
within Canada, we're going to petition the government to create their own sort of system that mocked sort of the government system, but had their own rules, their own regulations within their own communities.
Well,
they should have that right. Yes. Tim at Legacy 420 was a huge proponent in that sort of like. Because what happened out here was the OPP told the chief of police in Tyendinaga that you need to tell all of your stores that you need to shut it down. What they're doing is illegal. Yeah. So the chief went around and told everybody you need to shut down your thing, and something amazing happened. So a lot of these, I feel very ignorant as in the unknowledgeable Caucasian female, and it's lack of knowledge and not lack of choice of knowledge. I just don't know. So that's why I'm trying to be really careful, and I don't want to say anything wrong, but I seen people from different clans that normally were butting heads come together as a community and meet and say, how do we stop this? Because we have a right to be doing to provide medicine to people.
The biggest issue, I think, what's going on, Marijane, is that there's so many bands and there's so many different communities, reservations, and they don't all think as progressively as 2022.
And that's why I think they want to do their own within their own.
Yes, but
That's why the one up north is saying no.
Well, yeah, but it's also a matter of a charter thing, and there are some communities on First Nations and Six Nations that are fighting to be able to continue to do this, as it is their inherited right.
Now, I believe the ones out here have licenses that are given through the band. And the band only gives out a certain amount of licenses, and you have to be sanctioned by the band in order to have the store. From what I know.
Yeah, I haven't seen any new ones popping up.
Well, in Alderville, you won't. I think that's it. From what I understand, like I said, they were given a certain amount. That you guys are here now. No more.
Well, it did go a little crazy. I mean, like, it almost seemed like where I lived, it seemed like this, where there were stores that were popping up, which was fine. I mean, I'm not slamming anybody, but then it seemed like there was down the road, some guy just decided he was going to not sell weed from his basement anymore, and he was going to build a hut in his front yard and be public about it. And I was kind of like, you know, if I'm consuming cannabis for medicine and trying to go and get like quality cannabis, kind of don't want to go to the guy who's been selling weed out of his. I want to go to the guy who's treating it like it's a business, and he's there to help, and he's got a large selection. So
you go and get cigarettes at the reservation. They're not like Demorier's. They're more like Rothmans.
You could get Demorier's at the reservation, depending on what store you go to. That's what I'm saying. If you go to a guy who has a hut, you might not get them.
Well, you know,
so I just want better quality.
The guy who had the hut was the big tobacco thing for the last since the 70s, probably. You know.
Well, see, I've got no problem with Indigenous communities selling cannabis. This is their right. My problem that I have is what happened, I don't even know, 2-3 years ago. There were licensed producers that had cannabis stock that they couldn't sell on the legal market for whatever reason, and the companies didn't want to lose out on the money, so they sent reps to the reserve to sell the product at a cheaper, to not lose money. And now this is like, okay, MJ, where's your reports of this? There has been numerous reports from numerous people all around the reservation that know.
You know she's serious because her face went squishy. Her face went squishy. While you were trying to be serious, you were like.
I know, but you know what it is? You see this vein? There's a vein right here that comes out when I'm like absolutely serious. I'm serious.
Let's watch another video, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about Alan Park. Now, how do people know him better? Just Alan Park or Alan John Park? Because I know when I met him, he was presented to me as Alan John Park.
Oh.
Well, in Jamaica, he's known as Dead Mon Walking.
Oh.
All right. So this one here is part 2, again, from the best of Alan Park from Air Farce. And we'll watch this. I got to push the right button here.
Hello, I'm a liberal.
And I'm a PC.
Well, I believe every Canadian has the right to get married.
I believe that too, as long as it's a traditional marriage between a man and a woman.
Well, that's one way to look at it.
Well, yeah, the right way. You know, my government plans to pass a bill that'll end same-sex marriage.
That sounds so...
traditional?
I was thinking more out of date.
Who are they?
Oh, well, this is Cindy and her partner Mindy. And today they're celebrating their anniversary.
Anniversary?
You know, it's tradition.
Oh, maybe same-sex marriage isn't such a bad idea after all.
That's hilarious.
Oh, Alan.
I love that one.
I'm going to find another one.
Yeah, more.
Yeah. Here's part 3. I haven't seen this one. Oh, hold on. Okay, I have seen this one. All right, let's watch this one.
In Clement Health with Tony Clement. I'm the health minister who leads by example. Studies show drinking is bad for you. Other studies show drinking is good for you. I'm here at Hamilton's Mohawk College to demonstrate how to drink responsibly to young Canadians, our future of tomorrow. This is perfect. There's a party going on. Hey, kids, I want to talk to you about something important. I always take the bus. Kids, I need to get your attention. I'm talking to you about something important. Hey, kids, I want to talk to you about drinking. Okay. Recent studies show that one alcoholic beverage a day is good for your heart. And... Although I don't usually partake in alcoholic beverage consumption, there's no arguing the science. Bitter, red, pugnacious, just like the Liberal Party. There's got to be a more refined and easier way to drink this stuff. So as you can see, all it took was one drink. My heart's pounding stronger than ever. My blood flow's definitely increased. All around, I've never felt better. So join me again next time for another inclement health tip. Hey guys, I gotta pee. Seriously. Gotta let me down. That's enough. Hey, I'm gonna get angry. You don't want to see me angry.
So Alan had his prosthetics kit at home with some of the prosthetics that they used on CBC, and the teeth in that one he had, I remember. And every once in a while, he'd just throw one of the prosthetics in. There was a Chinese man with, the eyelids, and he'd just throw them on at home and break out into these characters that he had. So that was great to see.
I have another one. I got 3 or 4 more here loaded up. We'll watch them while we're chatting. He was a different individual.
I particularly love the duct tape to the wall thing.
Well, my thoughts is I would love to be able to ask him how long did they actually leave him on there, because I bet you they left him there for a while.
I'd like to know how long it took to tape him up there. I would have liked to have been there to watch them film that. That would have been funny.
How many rolls of tape was that? Too?
Right? You see, when Al said that, MJ, you have a lot of stories about Alan, I'm like, I wish I had more stories about Alan. That's the thing that made me the saddest when I heard the news, was I was like, damn. I wished I had more time to make more memories, like I only met him 3 times. And in those 3 times, those memories stuck in my head so vividly and so much, like, when you just meet somebody and you can feel the energy and you just see this like personality and you're like, I like this person. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but I like this person.
Yeah.
Like,
how long did Alan live in
Your mic is
was it 2 years, maybe? A year and a half, 2 years?
That was such a special time because he and I had the whole building to ourselves after 5 o'clock, and the roof, and it was just, it was special. And the winter was just horrible in there. It was so freaking cold. You'd have to wear all your clothes to bed and be in 2 down sleeping bags.
Well, so
boots on and your down parka.
This is where you guys were doing the Green Crush, right?
No, this is where Alan rented the studio next door to me in a 150-year-old factory building where they made nylons during World War II.
Oh, that's right, in Owen Sound.
Wow.
Yeah.
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 That was a crazy building.
Yeah, and it was super cheap. Like it was $500 a month for these kind of New York style lofts. And he got the best one. He had like his own door out to the roof, right? And the roof was looked down over Georgian Bay and all that stuff. It was like we were half a block from the water, right? And it was just such a special environment with painters and musicians in the building. So it was pretty unique. And Alan fit in perfectly, playing music all the time, and everybody loved Floyd.
Yeah. Floyd has a girlfriend now.
Oh my God!
I was going to say, we lost Mary Jane. Who has Floyd now?
One of Alan's really good friends, Darren, has Floyd.
When I met Floyd for the first time was at that event, and this was the first time that Alan had taken him out to an event as his service dog. And I don't think he was actually trained at that point.
Yeah.
But that all happened when I was around. Yeah, and for
you were doing your lights or something
Floyd
like
was
that back
Alan's
then.
dog.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was a bull mastiff. No.
Boston Terrier,
Boston
French Bulldog.
That's right. Yeah, French Bulldog.
He has a little girlfriend now where he lives, is another little Boston Terrier female.
Oh.
So the two of them have hit it off quite well.
Good.
Oh, nice.
Glad to know that Floyd is
he
okay.
was kind of a studly little dog.
He came to the restaurant and everything with us. You know, it was at a time where people were starting to actually push that. I have a service dog. I'm taking my service dog everywhere. And I remember Alan was saying he was actually shocked how easy it was just to walk in the door of the Queen Elizabeth. I think it was the Queen Elizabeth Center where we were, right? Down at the exhibition place for this event. It was a hemp fest, I think it was. And he was just walking around with Floyd openly. Nobody said anything, right?
Yeah. It was cool.
We initially shot Green Crush out of Pacific Junction Hotel in downtown Toronto. On King
did you
Street.
really?
Yeah, that was the initial podcast studio where we did quite a few different podcasts out of there, but Green Crush was one of them. And Floyd used to have to sit outside all the time. And we'd bring pillows and blankets and trying to keep him warm while we were, constantly, the waitresses would go outside and check on him and come back in. So that became a motivation for him. If I'm here and I'm recording and he can't be in here, how do we get him in here? Yeah. And the process started.
Did he end up being allowed to bring him in?
Yeah, for sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. He was I remember Floyd. He was a good boy. I think we've got, I found that picture. He did a comedy act. Sorry, I found that picture that we all took with Tracy and them. In front of
that was at Weedstock.
Hempfest.
It was Hempfest.
Was it Hempfest? I thought it was Weedstock.
Actually, you know what? I just found it was Hempfest because there's the thing right there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wow.
I just happened to be
cool.
I setting up my room here. I found all my passes and stuff, so I have them all hanging.
I was going to say your room looks good.
Thank you. Yeah, I haven't heard from Val, but Matt loves it. You want a Shatterizer? There's one behind me, a really big one.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
That's funny. I got mine right here.
You know what? I looked over in cleaning up.
I've been using some inferior products.
I love their bubbler.
Oh. I got that right here.
Oh, I love it.
I got them handy.
I had to leave my last one in Jamaica.
Boo.
You should buy a new one and ship it down in the mail.
So
get Matt to send you one.
For those of you who have, I got to show you guys this. For those of you who have the bubbler or know of the bubbler, you notice mine's got a little bit of blue in here.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is flavored bong water.
Oh God, I've heard of those. Yeah.
So this is blueberry. Okay. And what it does is so there's this stuff that you drop onto your cannabis and it changes the flavor of your cannabis. Yes. That stuff is disgusting. Don't
Yes.
buy it. This stuff is called bong water, and you're supposed to put it in the bottom of the bong. All you need is like this
It flavors your
in a beaker.
Yeah.
It flavors the air. So imagine if you were to just right now, but taste blueberry as you breathe in.
Not one of my
so
favorite
you
flavors.
still taste cannabis, but you also get there's watermelon, pineapple, blueberry, peach. I could go on, but you get the point.
Or you could just take some apple juice and put it in your bong.
Ew, that's like ew. No, you could put milk in there too, but you wouldn't.
I've gotten into smoking black hash again, or old style hash.
Me too.
Nice.
I've been buying hash. Mercedes is what I've been getting.
Okay.
But what I've been doing is I've been eating it. Like I've been. We're going to talk about this. Eventually, we might as well start now. I've been medicating.
You like the taste of hash, eh?
And I've been microdosing with psilocybin for 3 years now. But what I've started doing is eating just chunks of hash. When I get really bad pain, I'll eat a chunk of hash. I get really stoned, but it helps the pain. And I find when I smoke too much hash, I get real conflicted. You know, I'm like all the time because it's so oily. Same way when I'm smoking oil. You know, if I'm doing slickers, right?
It makes perfect sense that would help with your pain, though, because
Well,
most of the time people would use the oil capsules, right?
Yep.
Or oil just like directly. So it's like a large concentration. You could eat shatter too.
I
Just
have
a little tiny piece of shatter, or
we went and saw Imagine Dragons. Kelly and I took the kids, and we both ate a gram of shatter. We actually went to the store and got shatter and ate a gram of it, and it was awesome. I mean, the hash brownies, man. Look at Paul's face going. He's remembering. Okay, Paul, let's have a little background. We know that Phil was your brother, but you kind of had a job that was in the background of a major record industry that your brother ran, and you kind of had a little job where you grew stuff and provided for some very famous people over the years, correct?
Yes, well, and how that started was kind of interesting. I got in trouble for being who I am, and my brother was like, okay, you're going to have to come to work for me. And so I started in the mail room at Hartman and Goodman that managed Crosby, Stills and Nash, America, and Poco. And I was kind of forced into learning how to be a manager agent because I had to take a break from what I was doing, right? And and it proved to be something that I really loved and have dabbled in for decades afterwards. So it's definitely one of those things where they crossed, right?
Over and over.
The old management style for bands in California was that the music industry was based on psychedelics and cannabis.
Get them what they want.
Exactly. So, the Eagles were very pro it. Jackson Browne was. All the people who were on Asylum Records, and my oldest brother John was the first employee of Asylum Records. He and David Geffen started in the mailroom at William Morris together.
That's a long time
and
ago, eh?
John, actually, you go from the mailroom to being a secretary. And John got to be Colonel Parker's secretary for a year. Elvis's manager. And that was where he learned the management game. And he and Geffen and a guy named Elliot Roberts kind of set up Asylum Records. And John and Elliot managed all the artists, and there was like over 28 of them. You know, you had Neil Young, you had Joni Mitchell, you had Jackson Browne, you had the Eagles, you had Crosby, Stills and Nash, you had, I mean, it just went on and on and on. It was kind of all the artists of that period, right? And all of it was dynamically run behind cannabis. You know, like these guys had what they called the office pound. They had a drawer that any of the artists could come in and open up, and there was a pound of the best weed that was available, whatever it was, right?
Yes, please.
Yeah, and they would roll a joint and smoke it there in the office, and like that was what it was like in the music industry. And it was kind of the same thing with psychedelics. It was the thing that promoted, you know, the Jefferson Airplane, the Grateful Dead, and all those kind of things. So it was endemic to the culture of California and the music industry. And when it became part and parcel connected with hard drugs like coke and heroin, it was more or less in the closet. You know, it was rampant.
But mushrooms have already, you know, that big fat mushroom we've been seeing since the days of H.R. Puffin stuff have always been okay. They've used it in cartoons. They've used it in adult movies. They've used it in H.R. Puffin stuff and other shows that we grew up with. And yet the cannabis leaf can't be shown.
You know, it always blew my mind when you come to the realization, you're like Bob Marley, cannabis is the healing of the nation. And then it is literally the healing of the nation, right?
Well,
and you go, okay, that's like, there he was, and he was an actual prophet, right? So
if Peter Tosh and Bob Marley were fucking alive today, I don't think they would believe it.
No.
Okay.
I feel like if they were still alive, our world would be different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, our world is different because of them. Yes. I just don't.
Yeah, but if they were still around, just think of all the change they could have continued.
I think it would have happened faster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
you know, we've been doing this almost 20 years.
And the more you look at it, the more I look at it, the more I feel like, yeah, they were eliminated.
Yeah.
For the potential that they had to unite and create positive energy, right?
I'm just reminded of how I met Paul and how Alan and Paul met and how that all came about. Paul was a patient, I believe, of Sam Malachi's and a friend who wrote Cannabis Conspiracies, right? Is that the correct title?
Yes.
We wanted to have Sam on the show. I had been online and read about him and thought this is the perfect guest. But unfortunately, by the time I had called him and his agents, he had just had a stroke. Yeah. I think
he was on his way to Toronto to do our show.
Exactly. Okay, there you go. Yes. Yeah. So his agent or someone that was working for him said, look, I've got a list of names of people that are doing public appearances on his behalf. This is who I've got.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
I got to Paul Hartman and I said, who's Paul Hartman? And he said, it's Phil's brother. And, you know, putting the connection together that they were both comedians. I didn't even need to hear any of the other names. I knew that was the one. You know, so I told Alan about it, told Paul about it, connected them, and it was like a freaking bomb went off. The stories that Paul was just telling too, and I mean, it was fun just to watch it happen.
Yeah,
you know.
Sam was a real catalyst for stuff.
He pushed buttons. He pushed buttons and then some.
Oh man, he took it to the edge. He pushed it right to the edge. Sam did.
He had,
he provided me with all the oil that I consumed for my prostate. He just he became my doctor and provider for.
He did that over and over and over and over, almost daily.
I figure he gave away over $20,000 a month.
Wow.
I would think, I mean, the jars were huge, dude.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
And it was processed properly. It was done the way it should have been. Excuse me. He was an amazing man, and I am privileged to call him a friend.
That was another person I didn't get to make very many memories with. I also didn't get to meet Sam until after his stroke.
I spent a weekend at a cannabis thing in Peterborough at a resort with Fabian Henry and Sam and Ross Middleton, and that's where I met everybody. And Lori was there, Lori McEachern as well, and Jennifer Collette. So, and back then, and those are names that if you've been in the cannabis community in Ontario anyways, hey, Okay.
In the activist cannabis community, for sure.
Had he and Sam communicated very much?
Who?
Not at all.
Oh, Al.
Not at all? So
not at all. We missed that boat. Yeah.
Sam had his stroke, and I spoke at his book opening.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that, yes.
And Mike Braun from the publishing company called me one day after Sam had a stroke, and he was like, would you fill in for Sam on some of these events? And that's how I got the first speaking engagement.
I never did get that book.
Yeah.
I actually have a signed copy of that book, and it's one of the last things he ever signed after his stroke.
Wow.
Like it doesn't. If you look at the signature,
I know exactly when you got it.
It's not recognizable, and I have regret about about that moment because, like I said, I didn't get to meet Sam until after, and I knew how great of a man he was, and I was not thinking. It's one of those things that you look back on and you're like, "Fuck." He had just suffered a stroke, and I had asked him for his signature.
Yes,
I didn't think because
he
I should have known my at that time my boyfriend's father had suffered a stroke, and I didn't put two and two together that this person could possibly be struggling with the fact that he can't write his name.
He showed up at that event. I think it was a lift, and he was in a wheelchair, but he asked his wife.
He was walking when I had seen him.
When he showed up, I turned around and he was coming along the hallway in a wheelchair with his wife pushing him. And as soon as he saw everybody, he got up and got rid of the wheelchair. Okay. Very tenacious. He was very tenacious. Yeah. He knew what he wanted, and he was going to get what he wanted. And I think that he would have been, I don't know, proud is the word of where we are in the industry today.
I hope so.
I think that he'd be happy about some of the things that are going on. Not all of them. Not all of them.
Yeah. He was on his way back to a business meeting when it all happened that I had set up for him. And
the lights, right?
Not the lights, but for Castle Black, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because he was the chief medical officer at Castle Black, and he was the one who sold the idea of me being the master grower for them.
And you got to live in the castle.
I lived at the castle while they were finishing it and got 3 crops in less than a year. And it was really mismanaged completely, unfortunately, but it was great fun when Alan was there. And but Sam or Wilhelmina, as I was leaving, she said to me, "Watch your back." she didn't trust the guy who was the CEO. So
that's too bad. That's too bad. So
and it all played out the way she kind of stated. So
let's get back to Alan and Kim. You were Paul was his co-host, but you were one of the people in the background producing the show.
I feel so complimented when you say that, because that's really what I wanted to be, but I don't think
You're really just
was.
a sidekick. I remember the pictures.
Yeah.
They had this
I
whole.
just loved it.
They had this
Like,
whole.
I felt like yes, you can.
What do you call it? What was the character? Raiders of the Lost Ark thing for a little while. Yeah.
That was my very, very amateur Photoshop skills.
Well, let's talk about how that came along, because it came along because Alan wanted to present cannabis in a way that was funny but informative. Right?
So what happened initially is that he did an interview with Mike Richards, who does mainstream radio in Ontario. He worked for TSN priorly, but he was starting up a show at the same studio that we ended up shooting out of. And Danny and I at the time were producing things together, and we suggested that he have this guy, Alan, on the show that we knew. Mike also was a cancer survivor, and so we thought it would be a good connection. Alan being in the limelight and being somewhat of a celebrity. He had him on, and Alan told his story from the time he was diagnosed right up to present moment in about an hour and a half, which is amazing if you know Alan, because it usually takes him hours to tell you stuff. But it was a beautiful episode, and Danny and Alan and I sat down afterwards, and we pitched him basically the idea, let's do something with this story of yours. It's amazing. It was a year or two before legalization, so it was still kind of an outlaw idea. It was against the grain of what was being said online, other than places like you. And there was a couple, like Cy and people like that, the pioneers of the black market type, what they call the black market now. But he wanted to talk about the years and years of research that he'd compiled through other work he'd done through Conspiracy Queries, another podcast he had on XM Radio for years. People that he'd met, and their stories had also tied into cannabis. So the three of us put this idea together, and we started out with our first episode, and that kind of grew from there. When we met Paul, he brought in a plethora of whole new world of guests. Ernie Cephalo, the album designer. We had Aaron Keddos from Black Castle. The list goes on. So he kind of became the fourth wheel of the show at that point. And it was always from a producer's side of view, it was always a bit scary working with Alan because it was live. He'd throw some stuff out there sometimes that as a producer, I'd just be pulling my hair out.
Yeah. I'm that character here. You never know what I'm going to say. And I don't have anybody to shut me up.
I was going to say, but you are the producer, so.
Yeah. He'd call up the liquor board of Ontario Liquor Board, live on air, and start pushing them about their rules versus the cannabis rules.
Love it.
And stuff like that, you just never knew where it was actually going to go and whether we were going to be in trouble at the end of the day.
My buddy Dave and I, who I started the show with, it was me, Dave, and Brian. And we would literally just sit there on a Saturday and Sunday afternoon waiting for telemarketers to call. We got so good at it that we befriended a telemarketer that we enlisted into helping us go against actual telemarketers. It got quite silly. I mean, we would get, window and door people calling in, and we would just literally sit there and wait for them to call.
Yeah. He'd go into his doctor's office. Many times he went into his doctor's office and would present them with numbers, his PSA numbers, knowing that all he had done was treat it with oil. Keeping the doctor in the dark about that, and then throwing the numbers at him and explaining to him why those numbers were cut in half in a month or two. And he'd try and record that. So he was just that kind of guy that was always creating stuff that was fun to work with, right?
Do we want to watch another clip?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, here's number 5. All right, let me just load it up here. Oh, not that one. This one? No, not that one either. How about add that there, and then that'll work. There we go.
Robert, I'd like you to handle that.
Excuse me, Jack. I think you need to take a look at this.
Are you sure about this?
I checked the numbers myself.
Wow. We won the lottery.
We won!
God, we won! We're millionaires!
No, you didn't play, Mario. Remember? Is everyone in for this week's lottery? What about you, Mario?
You know what? I've been giving you $2 a week for the last 6 years. That's like $600. We haven't even won anything, not even a free ticket. Count me out.
Okay, can't win if you don't play.
Office lottery pools. Play together, win together, lose alone.
Aw, lose alone.
Are you over 55?
No. Yes, I am. You're not. I am. Paul is.
Not yet.
What was that?
Paul?
Yes.
Let's talk about other things, shall we?
Okay.
Paul is notorious for being one of the best growers in North America. Not just of weed, but other things. And he's got a very interesting job that he's about ready to go to back in Jamaica, correct?
That's correct.
Where he's going to be working for the university. And I'll let
for the college.
The college.
The
Okay.
College of Agricultural Science.
Well, I'll let you finish that story then. You go ahead and tell people what you want them to know.
Okay, so in Jamaica, they have the College of Agricultural Science in Port Antonio in Portland Parish. It's the oldest agricultural college in the Caribbean. Jamaica has a lot of those things. Jamaica was the first country with roads, the first country with electricity, the first country with water.
First country with Bob Marley.
Yeah, and it's kind of amazing that way. They're also the first ones with streetlights and phones and all that kind of stuff. Right? Yeah, and it's such a fascinating place because it's so multicultural, right? Like the indigenous population died when the Spanish found the island. They all got colds and flus and died, right, or were murdered by the Spanish. The Spanish were pretty bloodthirsty, and then they imported slaves, and that's where Bob Marley and all those kind of things come in because they had sugar cane everywhere and rice, and it was a labor-intensive endeavor then. The British, in their infinite wisdom, brought every important tropical fruit to the island of Jamaica because it really is unique in its habitat. It's one of the only places I've ever been that has almost 3 rainy seasons. It has 2 that are bridged by the hurricane season. And it's literally one of those places where any seed that hits the ground grows. So, their national dish is something called ackee and sawfish. Well, the tree, ackee, comes from New Zealand. the British brought it there. It's like a weed on the island. You don't even have to have them planted. They're planted everywhere. You can just go out in the jungle and harvest them. Sawfish is salted cod from Nova Scotia. So there's this intertwined relationship between Canada and the Jamaicans. This is their national dish. Ackee, the fruit, comes from New Zealand. So the British brought this there, it got married with sawfish from Nova Scotia, and became the national dish of a country in the Caribbean. And it's, they have things like noni from Tahiti, of course, breadfruit, which was the story of Mutiny on the Bounty, 8 kinds of mangoes, 25 kinds of bananas. It's just a food forest, like the stuff just went wild everywhere. And it makes it such a unique place, and it has an abundance of fresh water, and it has amazing amount of agricultural problems in terms of pests and problems like that, but nothing that isn't insurmountable. So I had spent a lot of time growing in the tropics, between the latitudes of 0 and 17, and it's a unique zone. So I learned a lot of skills that you need to have in a place like that are different than North America. And it was one of those things that I never realized that might prosper me in some way, but it was one of those things that became a unique set to the knowledge that I have. And having the ability to function in those places was really amazing, because the guys that were doing these jobs there that were native to the island, they would miss things because they're right there in front of your face all the time, so you don't necessarily see them. It always takes a fresh set of eyes. Yeah, I always say the more eyes and hands on something, the better in agriculture, because you miss things, and everybody has a unique skill for observing these things.
It's just like a mechanic, when you go get your oil changed at the Uber Lube, there's 2 guys working on your car, not one.
Yeah.
And they do redundancy checks. Checking this, checking that, checking this. Okay, check. You hear the guy down below,
Yeah. Boy, having aircraft is even worse, like you have all these safety logs you got to fill out all the time, and it's like, every time you walk around the plane, you check all the lube points, and there's so many things that you have to do to make sure are in right before you can take off. And agriculture is no better. I think the most important thing about agriculture right now is that we're in the next decade or two, we're going to make such strides. In terms of our ability to deal with natural problems in a more scientific manner, like robotic weeding and robotic pest control is going to be huge. I mean, that is just going to be stellar,
Like drones?
Oh, drones are already in place. DJI, the biggest manufacturer of drones, has agricultural software that is mind-boggling. I mean, what's great about that is that you can fly over a crop, and
I've seen
human eye
planters
can
on
only
drones
see
now.
a limited spectrum. But a drone equipped with the right camera and software can see a spectrum that the human eye can't see.
They're also using them to plant the seeds.
A problem before it is visual to the human eye.
Yeah, they're also using them to plant the seeds. They actually they set a path so it flies exactly straight, and they drop a set amount of seeds as they go along, just like a farmer would do.
Oh, I like that. A drone seeder.
Yeah,
that sounds cool.
Well, they've got everything. They're using drones now to prevent fires. They send them into a fire and they use them to make a line. So they spew out, gasoline where a human doesn't have to go, right? Kind of like a robot going into a bomb disposal thing, right?
Wow.
Drones are amazing. I have a little tiny one that I've yet to be able to fly, actually. I got it at the farm. I haven't tried it here yet. But they're hard. They're not easy to fly, I'll tell you that.
I know some people have flown them into trees, like just flown them right up into a 25, 30-foot tree the first time they take them out, and it's gone.
I had mine.
Yeah, that's my kid's story.
I had mine hovering at the farm, and David and I were sitting there going, cool. I pushed a button, and it shot straight up and then came straight down and broke a blade. You know. That's why
terrible.
They give you extras.
Yeah, I wonder why.
So, you're going to be teaching at the university? Is that what you're going to be doing?
I'm going to be teaching mushroom cultivation, organic regenerative farming, and cannabis cultivation.
Okay, I want to come and take those courses. Will they be doing them online?
I'm going to try to have it set up so everything is recorded. I mean, this is kind of the end of my agricultural career in lots of ways, right? I'll be 69 December 16th.
Yeah, but you know what? I think you'll still be out there as long as you're able.
Oh, absolutely. I'll die in the field somewhere picking a squash or something, you know.
It would be awesome, though, to get every one of your classes at least recorded just for yourself, so that way you could put it together just, you know, even just for you.
Well, I would like to know what everybody thinks about this idea. I've been working on this idea, and I'm actively trying to find a reality show producer to do this. I have a bucket list of places I want to grow. I want to go back to where I did my first grow in Mexico. I want to grow in Guatemala where I grew once. I want to grow in Colombia again. I want to grow in Nimbin in Australia. I want to grow. I want to do a tribute grow to Val Hogg, probably the best
everywhere
grower.
You've grown. Where's the best?
Yep, South Africa.
Where's the best?
California is the best.
Really?
Southern California. Yeah.
Wow.
It's in September when things are starting to ripen, the humidity is only 12% in Southern California.
You want, from what I understand, and like this is only my second grow that did this year. I got probably a quarter pound, but they came up in a car full of moving stuff and a kid and a cat and a dog. They made it here.
Yeah, that wasn't a short trip either. It wasn't like he moved around the corner.
When we got here, they were like this in the back. Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, I found out through conversation with Marcel and Lennie and Darcy, we miss you guys, that it is legal to travel with 4 plants that are not budding. So I did.
Only in vegetative state.
Yeah, so I did.
That's correct.
They were all like ready to pop. When I got here, they popped.
That also applies to gifting. You can gift dried flower, fresh cannabis, but you can't give fresh cannabis with roots if it's budding. It's got to be vegetative if it has roots, which is so weird.
So you can only give the leaf, not the bud.
Well, no, if you had a plant that was like ready to harvest and you wanted to give it to a friend, it's illegal to give them the whole pot. But if you take it and chop it at the bottom, at the base, and hand them the whole plant, as long as it doesn't go over however many grams of the wet cannabis, it's not 30 because that's dried cannabis.
150.
No. The dried cannabis, just like dried cannabis and 30 grams is equal to 7 grams of concentrate.
Okay. I don't think, you know what, I don't
or
think there's
6
any
drinks.
limits anymore. From what I understand, there's no limits.
Oh, there is. Not for storage.
For
there
cartage.
Wasn't for storage, but for traveling there is.
Okay.
We're allowed to gift each other, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you can, but So, for example, if I wanted to gift you cannabis, I could only gift you 30 grams at a time because technically I'm not supposed to travel with more than that.
Here you go. Here you go. And
So,
here you go.
well, no, because you can't travel with more than that. So that's it.
You can if you're licensed.
If you're legally medical and your prescription is 3 grams a day, because it works out to 30-day supply
if you're an old
of your
fart and you don't
prescription,
give a shit, you can do that as well.
or 150 grams max. So 30 days. Do you know what I mean? Or no, sorry, it's 5 grams.
You were allowed to mail it to each other.
Okay. You should be able to mail it.
Counting, and I'm confused.
Yeah.
You live near a res, it doesn't matter.
Well, and they're asking right now, the government of Ontario, or of Canada, I think, is asking for input on the Cannabis Act. So
on the 20-something, the 23rd.
the end of this month. And I will say, if as an activist, if you haven't gone on and given your 2 cents worth, what are you waiting for? It literally, once you start getting into the questions, you'll realize that they're literally trying to take away the medical system.
Well, yeah, and that's what everybody's saying. We aired a special panel thingy about that subject the other day. It's on our page. And that wasn't the only group that did something about it. I watched listened to the press conference. We used to go and sit, remember, Marijane? We'd go sit for hours and just wait for the government in
the House of Commons.
Talk to
That's funny. I've still been sitting in the House of Commons for the last 20 days for the emergency order investigation.
Cool.
Not really.
I think one of the hardest things for them to deal with is the fact that they've set legal precedents by legalizing it. And at some point it gains its full rights, right? Because people battle against the bullshit. Like, people don't knuckle under like they want them to.
Well, you know,
right?
the next argument is mushrooms. And it's going to be, I think, in my opinion, because, you know, I watched the whole cannabis thing. I think it's going to be a very similar, but quicker.
Yeah.
Quicker.
I think it's going to be different. I think they're going to decriminalize first.
Do you think they're actually? I don't know if they're going to. They didn't decriminalize weed. What are they going to decriminalize mushrooms for? I don't see it.
You know, it's happening state by state.
It is, yes, and country by country. So if
Jamaica has no laws pro or con.
Now, do you think that if they do legalize or decriminalize in Canada, are they going to do it Canada-wide or province-wide like they did with weed? Because that's what's fucked up the weed system, is the provinces. Each province has their own regulations.
I think the big problem with cannabis, and you kind of got to throw your ego.
I wish Jack was here
as a grower, right, or a master grower or whatever, right? Because it's like you look at the stock market. There's the commodity market: oranges, pork bellies, fruits, vegetables, whatever, right? Cannabis is just a vegetable, you know, and people got to get over the ego behind the manufacturing of it. Yes, it's a fucking art to understand how this plant works and how you can finish it properly and how you can post-harvest handle it correctly. But it's no fucking big deal. It's agriculture. It's farming. It's got to be cheap. Like, this shit at $30 a pound is probably the reality of where it is. The thing that is happening is that real quality will always cost more. And there's still guys in California that are getting $3,000 US a pound for indoor.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is mushrooms are about the same price. They're chugging along. They're doing the same thing about the same price.
Yeah.
You know? Like you can online you can get a bag an ounce of psilocybin or other mushrooms for $150 easy. If you know somebody.
Yeah.
You know, if you know a few somebodies, you can get it a hell of a lot cheaper. And there are kits now that are available because as we've been
to grow.
Yeah, as we've been told, technically, not legally, I'll say technically, psilocybin mushrooms are not illegal in Canada until they are dried. Now, there's an argument
which is funny because you can still eat them fresh and still get the same or similar effect.
So that's why there's an argument there that might not be an easy fight.
See, my problem with legalization is it turns whatever they're legalizing into a commodity.
Of course.
And takes away the value that it was actually intended.
And that's the only reason they do it.
Well, it's interesting.
For me, it's actually not even, I don't care whether it's legalized or not. I honestly haven't really supported the legal system very much. I'm one of those people that wants to see the black market.
I'm only using the legal market because it's the market that I have available to me. We have a new store in town, and I have the quasi-legal or the legacy market from BC. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. So, and I know even BC, the growers have been hit really hard. I know tons of people that have had to shut down grows just because of the prices and how the legalization has affected their prices and stuff like that.
If the government wants to be, like I've always said, that if the government wants to have the right people controlling and running the market, they need to let the people who grew into this, and that's not a pun, they grew into this, the people like Matt Murnaugh, okay?
Instead of OPP and politicians.
Exactly. And I'm using Matt as an example because he came into this a very sick individual and won a case that precedented us to be doing some of the things. The same with Owen Smith and so many others. And now recently, Jerry Martin, you know. I haven't seen Jerry around since the verdict because we lost touch. But congratulations there, right? That whole group of people stood up, right? Yeah. And it destroyed Jerry's life.
I wonder. I know that California. I thought I had heard at one point when we were filming Green Crush that they were talking about allowing growers to become part of the new system, whereas we were still punishing them and keeping them criminal. I wonder how that worked out for them.
Well, I am very close friends with a guy named Ben Pang, and he has a company called King Clone Brand.
Okay, yeah, Ernie.
And Ernie owns 10% of it and designs all their stuff. Ernie Cefalu, who designed all Alice Cooper's covers, Ozzy's covers, the Bee Gees, Black Sabbath. Amazing designer. Jesus Christ Superstar logo. And he's designing a logo for me for the Master Growers Society.
I have a question, Paul. Then we'll come back to this, okay? Just because it just happened. Why do you sneeze from cannabis? I've heard it's a mark of a very good strain. Is that true?
I think that could be because it's kind of an allergic reaction sometimes, which has to do with strength. I remember when Thai weed first hit California, I used to get all this eye twitching all the time, right? And it
only happens to me with really good strains. I start sneezing my ass off.
Yeah, that makes sense. It does stuff like that.
It's weird. Okay, sorry.
It can push a grass allergy in you too, right?
Go back to your story if you remember. He doesn't.
What was I talking about? What was I mumbling about?
I'm sorry, buddy.
The California trying to integrate their growers into the new system.
Oh,
okay. So they sell a shitload of licenses, right? And particularly in San Jose, where King Clone Brand is, they sold about 125 of them. Right now, Of those 125, there's only 25 active. Everybody else has gone out of business. And I think the hard part for the industry is the gold rush mentality that jumped into everything and dumped hundreds of millions of dollars.
Very well, did it?
Yeah. Into something that is simple agriculture, right? It's kind of embarrassing in a lot of ways. You know, you go, holy shit, how stupid are people? You know, like it comes down to the fact that it's just farming, right? And if you're a good farmer, that's great.
They should have let the people that have been getting things going and patience.
Yeah.
Okay. Patience, they're the ones that know how to grow weed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seriously. No, it's people who have passion, you know, and that's one of the things when I've done teaching or I'm training crews of people, the thing that I say is, if you're here for money, you're of no value to me. If you're here because you're passionate, then we got something to work with, right? And whether it's you're growing basil or cannabis, it's the same thing, right? Like if you're not passionate about that, you're not giving it what it needs, and it's not giving you what you need. You know, there's no fulfillment of exchange happening.
If you're going to freak out about how well your sunflowers came out in the fall,
oh
do
my
the
God,
same
man. Like,
as
I freak out about
your
the
bud,
stupidest
you know.
shit in gardening. Like, you know, the end of my job here, I put in a vineyard, and really late in the season, the dumbest fucking thing in the world to do, but that's how the
I saw
owner's
pictures.
was,
It looked
right?
like it came
More
up.
money than common sense. And and then I had to put in a cover crop to hold it together over the winter, right? And I didn't know whether it was going to happen, but we had crazy warm weather here in Ontario till last Monday when it snowed, and I kind of lucked out, and that's kind of how my whole agricultural career has been. Wow, I've seen timing opportunities and been able to meet them with what is needed to make something work, right? And that's something that some people have, you know, like, you know, painters have skills that I don't have. Somebody I was talking to was saying, you know, like, wow, you have interesting skill sets and things. And I said, yeah, and other things I'm mentally retarded, right? And I think that's the way it is for everybody. But growing things for me is, you know, plants have become my ally, and every one of them has been a teacher. Every plant that I have mastered in the process of growing has taught me something. And because of my lack of ability to really communicate effectively, sometimes plants have become my allies in ways that people can't, you know?
Yeah. We have to watch our time, because if we don't, we're going to get cut off of Roku. Okay.
Well,
yeah. So I wanted to give you guys both a minute or two to say something about your friend. You guys were friends with him right up until the end here, and I wanted to give you guys a minute. You too, MJ. You know.
Yeah, I do have one story I do want to tell about Alan.
Now just keep in mind we've got 5 minutes.
Okay.
For all three.
Mine's short. So.
Go for it, MJ.
Go for it.
Okay, I'll go first. Mine was the time that I went and spent the night at Kim's place and showed up right after I had left a wedding. So I came, like, you know, dressed to kill, we'll say. And I just want to say, Alan and I always joked about how we would tell people about the time that we spent the night together. And I'm like, now I'm going to take that with me to the grave, because, I mean, Alan's not around to tell the joke, so I guess that's my little secret.
You know what's funny,
like,
MJ?
I spent the night with Alan.
It was
a very hot night. I'm just going to say it was a very hot night.
And I still have your black fleece blanket that you left at that night. My kitties cuddle with it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
Okay, Kim.
So
Kim,
that's my story.
You go now, Kim.
What can I say? Alan was a very unique individual. One I don't think that you'll ever come across someone like him again. People can still go back and watch Green Crush if they didn't subscribe to it when we first did it. His words have been immortalized, which is amazing that we can go back and hear his message and that can keep moving forward. I'm really actually hoping. Yeah, on Green Crush. We may even come up with some hidden footage that we didn't release.
That would be awesome.
Because of Alan misplacing it at the time.
I'm
hoping that we'll find some treasures and we'll be able to release some stuff.
Awesome.
That'd be awesome.
But basically, I just wanted everyone that loved him to know that in the very end, he was really clear in his last at least month. It was a joy to be around him. A lot of people know he had some difficult times, and he was clear and concise and full of love and positivity. I think it was his time. He was ready. And I just, I'm sad, but at the same time, I'm happy that he got to be here as long as he did with the grace of cannabis. And that I know he's moved on to greener pastures, right? So my goal right now is just to keep his word alive, even if that means staying on the Facebook page and sharing stuff that he would share. That's what I plan to do in the near future to help me and to keep things immortalized for him.
Awesome. Please let me know, when you start doing stuff like that, because we'll definitely put it out.
I will, for sure. Thank you.
Paul, my friend, go. You have 5 minutes.
Oh, man. Alan Park. It was such a surprise meeting him and doing what I did for Sam was part of it, was the catalyst that brought he and I together. And also Kenny Hotz played a part. He was friends with Danny Menlo.
Really? Kenny?
But I kind of was starstruck for some reason with Alan, and that's just not normal for me. And because I've been around so many in it. But I really got where he was coming from, and he and I, those 2 years or so that we spent in Owen Sound together, living next door to each other, were just extraordinary, and I'm going to cherish those memories right to the grave. And then him living in my bedroom in Jamaica with me it was just incredible, and there's no way that an experience like that, it's so impossible to put it into words. I kind of, I want to tell the story. I just don't know how to do it. Yeah. And I love the guy so much. And I talked to him maybe 2 months ago, and he had spent some time or was in a homeless shelter outside Ottawa. And it was before he got into this hospice where he finally died. And I didn't know if he was fucking with me or what he was doing, And I got off the call and I was just like, and I had said to him, I'm probably going back to Jamaica and I'll put together a room for you and you can come down, And I would have done anything for him to help him get further down the road, but he was already in this trajectory that he had set for himself. And I think he knew exactly when the end was coming, and he had a level of clarity that
he did it his way.
Yeah, he did it his way for sure.
Yeah.
And
sounds like he did
I have
that
so
a lot.
much respect and love for the guy. He's affected me like one of my own brothers. It's hard to put it into words for me.
Yeah, you did pretty good, my friend.
The hospital he was in at the end, Elizabeth Breyer, I believe it was a hospice out of that. And the doctors there got him, and he was comfortable, and they fed him incredible meals, and he literally thought he was in paradise. You know, he couldn't stop sending pictures about how he'd finally found a place that he could be himself and get the healing that he needed.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
His sister-in-law, who was there just before he died, and then she went home to take a shower, and then she came back and he was passed. And she sat there with him for a long time, and she started to look around the room, and he had so much stuff. He had all these musical instruments and all kinds of shit. She said she spent 3 hours packing up stuff. And I was like, God, that is just so Alan, you know. He engaged everybody so thoroughly that everybody just was in love with the guy. You know, they tried to make his.
He was very infectious.
Yeah, he was.
You know.
Absolutely.
Right. The first time I met him was at the Hot Box, only for 10 minutes.
It was 4:20.
Yep. And he came up. We Abby was nice enough to let us use her living room upstairs to do the show from, and he came up. But we had already packed up by the time he came up. So then we had him on the show. I think we had both of you guys on the show, and then of course the infamous car drive through City of Toronto.
Yeah. I miss those old places. Like, I've heard Hot Boxes closed down now.
Yes.
The Underground, you know.
Joanne's still around, though. Abby, not so much. You know, Abby has taken a back seat. She has her family now, but Joanne is still trying to do the comedy stuff. I don't know where it's going.
She makes a mean cookie.
Does she?
Doesn't Abby have a place in Jamaica?
Yeah.
I don't know if she still. I don't think. I think when Hot Box was sold, that was sold as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if she still has a place there. You know, I think she's in the Grange area in Toronto. At least those are the pictures she takes. So, yeah.
I want to thank you, Al, for reaching out. You know, it's really great that you wanted to kind of memorialize what he did in this way. It means a lot to us at Green Crush. Danny couldn't be here, but
yeah,
you know, the fam.
He was invited.
Fam.
He was invited.
I would like to I was going to bring this up, and I'm glad you mentioned Danny. I just want to say thank you to Danny because, I made it all the way to the end, and I started to cry, and it's probably just gonna, anyways. On the day I found out about Alan's passing, I spent a lot of time just sort of like wandering around like a zombie, just kind of staring off into space, like not kind of like just crying. And Danny wrote something really, really sweet, and it made me feel better. And I noticed it wasn't just me that he wrote these things to. It was every single person that had wrote something that, you know what I mean? So like, I felt like as special as Alan was, he touched Danny enough that Danny felt it was his job. He needed to do this. And I just want to say thank you, Danny, because I know it made me feel better, and it helped. So.
You know what? I think that was part of who Alan was. Like, he had that effect on people. You wanted to support it, you know. That's what drawed me in. I was like, man, whatever I can do to help you, Alan, you know, like.
Yeah, like I said, infectious.
However much, whatever menial way, you know.
He's like a bad cold.
And just so you know, he was starstruck by you too, Paul. I remember, you know, hearing his side of it when he first met you. And
I think a lot of us are, Paul.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of us are. Okay. You've had a very Phil aside, John aside, you yourself have had an amazing journey, my friend. And I am privileged to call you a friend, Paul. Really. Okay, so I would like.
It's honor is mine. I feel the same way about you and Marijane and Kim. I mean,
Paul
Danny.
said I want to come on a show and talk about Alan, and I said okay. So that's what we've been doing. And we'll do it again, I'm sure, down the road. And I hope that once you get settled, Paul, we'll make you a regular here again, like you used to.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, I'm in for bringing back the Green Crush. Let's do it.
Hey, in a second, buddy. In a second. Let's talk.
Right.
Let's talk.
All right. Love and blessings to you all.
Okay. Thank you, boy.
Take care. Thank you.
This is the 420 Radio Show. We're here every Friday. 420radio.ca. Take care. Peace.
So what are you doing? Nothing. Why not?
I'm trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's all right. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.